Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with another react. But this one's going to be a little bit different. It's not a music video react. We are reacting instead to a concept and idea. And it turns out that there is a set of toes that I have not yet stepped on, so we are going to see if we can do that today. It should be no surprise to you if you are a member of the crew, you've been around for a while, that I don't like communism. I find it absolutely abhorrent. The same with socialism. And is the exact same with anarcho-capitalism. They all have this same fundamental flaw. And the video that we're about to watch deals with that in great measure. And so we are going to watch this and we are going to talk about the Jones Plantation. I have watched part of this, right? I wanted to see what it was about before we dove into it. But we are going to watch the rest of it together. I only got in the very beginning and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. But I am almost certainly going to step on some toes, so if you want to bring your steel boots and tag along, you are more than welcome. But let's dive in and see what's up with the Jones Plantation. There is a reason why it has less than a 3% like ratio. It starts out with the porn intro, though. How about that? Somebody's fixing to get fucked. Am I past 30 seconds yet? We're good.
Mr. Jones owned a cotton plantation and many slaves. One day he was talking to the owner of the plantation next to his, and Mr. Jones was lamenting the fact that times were tough. He was having to work his slaves harder than ever and was having trouble with some of them being disobedient or trying to run away. The other plantation owner said he knew someone who could help.
Day 1.
One day Mr. Jones called his slaves together so a man named Mr. Smith could talk to them. Before beginning, Mr. Smith whispered to Mr. Jones, "Whatever I say, do not contradict me or interfere, and I promise you your slave troubles will end." "My name is Mr. Smith," he said to the slaves, "and this may be the happiest day of your lives. From today forward, you will no longer be slaves, but free men." Mr. Jones was so shocked he started to step forward, but Mr. Smith gestured for him to remain silent. He did, only because the other plantation owner had spoken so highly of Mr. Smith's skills. "You are no longer the property of Mr. Jones," Mr. Smith continued. "You are free. No more would you be forced to labor for the benefit of Mr. Jones. Now you can work for yourselves." Now the slaves were all murmuring and looking at each other.
Welcome to communism. This is directly out of Animal Farm.
Many were smiling, many were looking puzzled. "In fact, you are now free to leave the plantation whenever you want," Mr. Smith said. "However, since we are surrounded by other plantations, if you leave, some other plantation owner will likely claim you as his own the moment you set foot on his property. So I
Oh wait, is that some false equivocation going on? I bet it is.
urge you not to risk your newfound freedom by doing something so foolish.
This is where I was like, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to do this for the crew.
Instead, I suggest
I'm going to try and hold most of my comments, but I doubt that I will be able to.
that you stay here, no longer as slaves, but as willing participants and part owners of this plantation. Yes,
Hey look, communism, rearing its ugly little head again.
this is now your plantation." Mr. Jones bit his tongue to keep from objecting. "For now, we might as well leave Mr. Jones in charge," said Mr. Smith, "since he is the only one with any experience at running a plantation, which is quite a complicated thing to manage. But he will no longer be your master, but just another worker on the plantation. In fact, he will now be using his organizational and management skills to serve you. Whatever problems you may have had with him before, you are now all equals, and you need each other to make this work. If we all cooperate and work together, we can all reap the benefits together. In honor of this happy occasion, I present you this new symbol of togetherness and cooperation, this flag, which shall be the emblem of the new, free Jones Plantation."
And here we get the first argument against the state, right? That's what this is going to be, anti-state.
He held up the new flag, but most of those listening were still too amazed to respond. "And this shall be our motto," Mr. Smith announced. "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones Plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all. So
there's some equivocation between communism and the free state of America, I am sure.
celebrate, everyone has the rest of the day off. Enjoy your freedom, do as you please, and be back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, so that we may begin work on this great and noble new endeavor as equal free men." Finally convinced that Mr. Smith was serious, the former slaves applauded and cheered.
Day 2.
We all want this plantation to do well, Mr. Smith said at the beginning of the next meeting, so we can all share in the benefits. We all know that it takes
Hey, look, there's some more communism.
a lot of effort to make a cotton plantation work. Just because you're all free doesn't mean you can stop working. In fact, since you're now working for yourselves, I expect you to work even harder than ever before, but now with pride and joy, knowing that you're working for yourselves. Of course, there still have to be rules. If everyone just does whatever he wants, the plantation won't produce anything. This experiment will fail and we'll all starve.
That is an absolute truth.
You should be thankful that Mr. Jones has agreed to stay on to lend his knowledge and skills to this endeavor, and I trust you will all do your own part to make this work. Several of you have been chosen to act as project supervisors to manage different aspects of the operation, to make sure everyone is doing his assigned job, to make sure that the rules are followed, and so on.
Hey, look, more communism.
The rest of you
I know somebody's going to say that's not, but it is. Like you're appointing someone who may or may not have any experience to do the supervising. That is definitely communism.
You may head out to the fields to start your first day of work as free men.
Day 3.
The next morning, Mr. Smith had a grim expression on his face as the daily meeting began. I have an unpleasant duty to do today, he said. Yesterday, Charles was caught keeping some of the cotton he picked, presumably to sell for his own personal profit. That is against the
Hey, look, more communism.
rules. That is stealing.
That's exactly what happened during the Holodomor. Right there. That exactly is what happened.
For that, Charles must be punished. 2 men tied Charles to the whipping post. I take no joy in this, Mr. Smith continued, but you must understand, if we do not maintain order, if we do not have rules that we all abide by, then the plantation will fail, and we will all suffer.
Once again, that is a truth.
The whip cracked against Charles' back. But if we all pitch in for the common good, then we can all prosper. Being
Common good. There we go, communism again.
free doesn't mean you should be selfish and greedy. We must each do our assigned duties and obey the rules, and then we can all benefit, and each of you will receive your appropriate share of the profits. A young man named Samuel stepped forward. But if you and Mr. Jones decide the rules and whip us if we disobey, how is that any different from what we had before? How can you say that? Mr. Smith asked. I'm shocked. You were a slave before, and now you're free. Things still need to be managed and organized by those best qualified to do so. Do you know how to run a plantation, Samuel? Well, no, he answered. But if we're free, why do we get no say in what the rules are and how things work? I'm surprised at your ingratitude, Mr. Smith answered. None of you know how a plantation is run, so you're in no position to be making decisions about how things are done here. You don't seem to appreciate all the things that Mr. Jones provides for you, from protecting you from all the outside threats you know nothing about, those who would come here, capture and enslave you, if not for Mr. Jones' protection, to making sure that you all have food and housing, tools to work with, you're cared for when sick and injured, and so on.
Okay, so again, we have some more argument for communism.
There wouldn't be a plantation at all, no cotton to pick, no land to plant and harvest, if not for him. You should be grateful that he's made possible the level of comfort you now have. Your lives would be far worse if not for him. Nevertheless, as free and equal participants in this endeavor, from now on at each meeting, any worker may have 2 minutes to ask questions or voice suggestions or complaints. With that, the workers all seemed satisfied and headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton.
Day 4.
I have a big announcement, Mr. Smith said as the daily meeting began. Mr. Jones' cousin is here, and not just to visit and see how our project is coming along. It has been decided that from now on, you will be deciding who will manage the plantation. Of course, this job can't be done by just anyone, but every 3 months we will have a special meeting at which all the workers will vote on whether we think Mr. Jones should run the plantation or whether we think his cousin, Mr. Johnson, should run the plantation.
So we're having a direct dig at the electoral process here in the United States now, right? That's what this is?
That means that ultimately you are in charge because you will be deciding which man you want running things on your behalf. If you don't like the way things are being managed, you now have the power to change it.
This is some victim mentality shit, and we will get into that.
Amazed and pleased, the workers headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton. Days passed, months passed, a year passed, and the plantation continued to operate as before. Sometimes Mr. Jones was in charge, sometimes Mr. Johnson was in charge, but the day-to-day routine stayed exactly the same. The workers worked hard, long hours every day, and still had little to show for it. Every day the meeting would begin with them all reciting the Jones Plantation motto, "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones Plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all." One day Mr. Smith announced, "Samuel is asked to say a few words this morning, and whatever the rest of us may think of his ideas and opinions, we are all free here, and that means we are all allowed to speak our minds. So, Samuel, you have 2 minutes. Begin." Samuel stepped forward, looking scared. "I was excited when all this started," he began, glancing nervously at Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. "But don't you all see what's happened here? Nothing has changed. We're all still slaves." There were grumbles of disagreement from the crowd. "They tell us what to do and whip us if we don't. They still make all the rules and punish us if we disobey. They let us make suggestions and complain about things, but they never really change anything. They let us choose between Mr. Jones and Mr. Johnson, but what's the difference? The situation stays the same. We do all of the work and they take as much as they want and decide how much they'll let us keep. They live in luxury, made rich by the cotton we pick. We do all the work and have to build our own huts, grow our own food, and take care of ourselves. They leave us just enough that we don't revolt or run away. This is not freedom. We're all still slaves. They've only changed the words they use, but nothing else has changed. They say we're all free and equal, but we're not. They command and we obey. That's not freedom. That's not equality. They say we're free to leave, but all that means is that we're free to be someone else's slave. Why should we work or obey the rules? We didn't agree to this. They made the system. They forced it on us. They control and rob us and call it freedom. They've deceived you into thinking that being able to choose which slave master you'll work for is the same as being free. It's not. Open your eyes. If you keep what you produce, they call it stealing. When they take what you produce, they call it sharing and fair distribution. Can't you see that?
Again, communism is a terrible thing.
This is all. Your time is up, Samuel, Mr. Smith announced calmly. At his gesture, 2 supervisors grabbed Samuel by the arms and led him to the whipping post. "I'm sorry, Samuel, but you've broken the rules. There are rules against encouraging others not to work and encouraging others to break the rules. You're only hurting all of us with your discontentment and your complaining and your disobedience."
Again, this is just a retelling of animal farm. This is communism.
The whip fell and Samuel let out a grunt. "Without rules, without order, all would be lost. Without law, there would be chaos. We can't just behave as wild animals, each doing whatever he pleases. We must all follow the plan and all do our duty for the betterment of everyone. And those who do not must be punished." The whip fell again and blood flowed freely from Samuel's back. "Samuel, it is you who are stealing from the others. When you don't do your assigned work, you are making more work for others. When you disobey the rules, it is you who are endangering the future of everyone else here. You are the thief. You are the criminal. You are the one trying to destroy the arrangement that keeps us all safe and prosperous." At every lash of the whip, the other workers cheered louder and louder, some yelling curses at Samuel. "Being spoiled and selfish, you complain about everything, talking as if you're oppressed. But you are the one ruining things. You are the one keeping us from being all we could be. It is your greed and your rebelliousness that is hurting all of us. They all play by the rules," Mr. Smith said, gesturing at the others. "What makes you think that you don't have to? You think you're above the law?" There were loud yells of agreement as the whip fell again. "We must maintain order," Mr. Smith proclaimed, "to make this plantation great, to make it so that we can all be happy and prosperous. To have the society we want, there have to be rules. We all have to contribute our fair share to this great endeavor, and we cannot tolerate actions and attitudes that seek to undermine the amazing things that together as free men we have achieved and will continue to achieve." Mr. Jones was smiling as he gave Mr. Smith a pat on the back. The crowd was cheering so loudly that none of them had noticed that Samuel had died.
All right, so that...
What you have been taught about government and politics is no more accurate or reasonable than what Mr. Smith taught the slaves. If you're ready to look through the veil of rhetoric and propaganda to see the reality beneath, get a copy of The Most Dangerous Superstition. It will change the way you see.
You see that book, huh?
The world.
All right. Now we're going to discuss. Voluntarianism, as is being pushed here, is an absolute fucking myth. It has never existed and will never exist anywhere on the fucking planet. I know, somebody just took exception to my terminology, but I don't care. There is nothing that annoys me more than the victim mentality that is being pushed by this shit right here. Communism is a horrible idea. It never works and it never will. Socialism is a horrible idea, and it never works, and it never will. Anarcho-capitalism is a horrible idea, and it never works, and it never will. It has never been a thing, ever, on this planet. Since the beginning of time, people have arrayed themselves in groups, and those groups have had rules and structure. There has been punishment for it. Before there was a concept of currency, there was still currency, because if I grew chickens and you grew cows and I wanted beef, I traded my chickens for your cows, and therefore we had a currency, a medium of exchange. That's all that currency is. The dollars that we use are just convenience. It is a way to accumulate time into value that can be exchanged for the value of someone else's time. Voluntarianism is a wonderful idea. I used to subscribe to it, so I am so much more against it these days than I ever was, right? Because nobody is harder on an X than its current, or harder on a current than an X, and that depends on your proclivities, right? Nobody's harder on a current addict than an ex-addict. Nobody's harder on a current prostitute than an ex-prostitute. It doesn't matter. I'm hard on this because this is dumb. I know. I believe in communalism, right? That is communalism, not communism, communalism. What that means is that I'm going to look out for my neighbors, but not to my detriment. I'm not going to allow my neighbors to override me because it might be to my detriment. Our current system of government is absolutely flawed. I will grant that. The selection process has been heavily manipulated, but you know who's responsible for that? We are. We are responsible for that because we do not insist upon good candidates. Instead, we take what they give us. We are the problem. It's not them. It's not the government. I'm going to tell you something and you don't like it. I can guarantee you that if you're watching this video, you are not going to like this. You will not build the fucking road. You won't do it. You might in front of your house build that section of road. But your fucking neighbor's not going to. Your neighbor's going to let it go. He's going to let it fall into disrepair. And you know who's going to have to repair it? You are. Why? Because you are responsible and you are wanting to take care of things and you want to get the fucking town. So you will take care of your neighbor's road. The ability to pay taxes is a privilege. It's not theft. The theft is that we don't hold the elected representatives responsible for the things. We have become too soft for that. There was a time in this country that people would get tarred and feathered for misappropriating funds. There was a time in this country when there were severe consequences for doing the wrong thing, but we've gotten rid of that. We shoved off our responsibility to make sure that things are done correctly to someone else. Half the fucking people that vote don't even research what they're voting for. They have no clue. They will vote according to a fucking letter, and that's a problem. I will grant that. But you won't make the road. And I can give a practical example of that. ExxonMobil. Now, if you have never worked, let me take that off. If you've never worked in a chemical plant, you probably won't understand this, but I have. I have worked extensively in chemical plants in ExxonMobil right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's one of the largest refineries on the planet. Every single inch of this, miles wide, right? The circumference around this place is miles. They have the most extensive private roadway in the state of Louisiana is inside of ExxonMobil. and the roads are absolute fucking garbage. You can't drive down them in a straight line with no problems. It's not possible. Why? Because it is a private road. It would serve nobody's purpose but their own to have their roads maintained, and yet they don't do it. You know why? Because it costs money and it's inconvenient. The ability to pay taxes, to have somebody else take this small percentage and use that to build roads is a fucking privilege. It's not theft. The same for education. The problem is that we don't hold them accountable. Now, I have been intimately involved in building roads. You may not know this, but once upon a time, I ran a lab. It was a construction materials lab, and I was the person responsible for ensuring that the correct materials were used in construction. Some of that construction was roadways. The Comey diversion, there's several roads. I'm not going to try and list them off, but many of them, I was responsible for ensuring that the things were done correctly. So I know that they were done correctly. But I also know that there is just as many people out there testing those roads who will let it pass whether it passes or not, and that is our problem. It is individual responsibility that is our problem. You want no government, but you're scared to take responsibility for your own life in any real measure. We have procedures and laws and all of those things in place because they are necessary. You may not believe that. You are so used to living here in civilization that you have not seen uncivilized behavior. Well, once again, I have. I have walked the roads in Dubai and UAE and all of those places where there is a contention. I've walked those roads. I've seen those people. I understand their mentality. And I'm going to tell you something. And you don't have to believe this. I tell people all the time, I'm here to tell you things. I'm not here to convince you of them. If we did not have a government here in the United States, then we would all be subject to someone else. That is an indisputable fact. You don't have to like that, but it is true. If, just for instance, we were to take Texas out, the most heavily armed state that we have, if there was not the threat of the federal government, it would be taken over by the cartels within a fucking week. You know why? Because the cartels have the nuts to go in there and do it, and you don't. Chances are you won't even defend yourself when they come. That is true. People talk big game. They got guns, but until you have been in combat, until you have had a gun pointed at you in earnest and you have heard the bullets fly past you, you don't know how you're going to react. And a large portion of our United States military forces who train extensively for combat duty freeze the very first time that they are in combat. That is a reality. Because it is a situation that humanity hates. They get scared, and that is nothing that you can really do anything about, especially the first time that it is visited upon you. And so if you are invaded, chances are you are not going to respond, no matter how big of a game you talk. Now, I can talk because I have responded. I have had bullets thrown at me in earnest. I have people tried to take my life, and that is a real thing. And that wasn't even when I was in the military. I have responded with appropriate force, so I know where I stand. I know what the adrenaline feels like, and I know what the shakes feel like afterwards. I know how scared it fucking is. I know what it's like to have to hold your butthole tight so you don't shit yourself because somebody is throwing bullets at you. That is a reality. And you can sit here in our civilization that we have built on the backs of people who believed in this country. And you can complain about this country. That is your right. You can complain about your choices in the election and then never take any action to change that into something positive. You can do that. It is your right. You have the ability to sit back. You have the ability to let other people do, and that is what happens. You don't like your choices? Well, make new choices. You can talk about this election cycle with the presidential set, but honestly, for the most part, the president doesn't play that big of a fucking part. You know who does? Your local representatives. Your local representatives have more power than anything invested in the federal government. Yes, they have the big guns. Yeah, that's true. But the most significant thing that you can do is to ensure that people who are representing your actual values are actually representing your values. My congressman right now, Bill Cassidy, I call that bitch out all the time because he promised one thing and he got in office and immediately backtracked and did the other thing. I am geared towards getting him out. We got 2 years until his election. This is the year when I'm going to start making sure that we got somebody to replace him. I want to make sure that he does not run again. I want to make sure that there is somebody in that position who actually represents me and my values and what I stand for. And it is possible that whoever that is, won't make it. Your local representation is more important than the national level. Who you send locally to the national level makes much more important. It's much more important than who you elect to the position of president. The position of president is a powerful one. I will grant you that. The most powerful position on the planet. That's because it is not dispersed. He has executive powers. He has the ability to say, we were attacked, let us respond. That is one of his powers. He has the ability to say, I don't agree with this legislation. Reconsider it. That is one of his powers. But he doesn't have the power to write your laws. That is your local congressman. He doesn't have the power to decide what taxes you pay. That is your local congressman. He doesn't have the power to dictate where those funds go once they have been allocated. That, again, is your congressman. Your congressman is your direct representative, and it is up to you to ensure that you are represented in the manner that you want to be. And this blame it on the state shit, that's victim mentality. That is you refusing to take the responsibility. Like as if the fucking government was gone, you would actually take the responsibility to defend your neighbors. You wouldn't. You would let them get robbed and hope that it's not you. That's what you would do. Almost guaranteed. There are other people like me who have been in the fucking heat and have had lead thrown at your head. There are people out there that know how they will respond. But you know how many people have served in the military? It is less than 3%. Less than 3% of the population has ever served. That means that 97% of you have never raised your hand and have never taken a weapon in earnest. That is a reality. I understand the wanting to be free. I want to be free. Our problem is that we don't hold these local representatives to account. If your roads suck, it is because of you. It ain't because of them. My roads here in Walker, Louisiana, they're working on some of them, but we have better roads. We do. We have better schools than they have in the same parish in the same state. The schools here in Walker, Louisiana are better than Denham Springs. They're better than Holden. They're better than Albany. My schools here are better. We pay more taxes for that. But we ensure that our taxes are used in the manner that they are meant to be. We don't have this transgender shit in our schools. It's not a thing. We don't have these issues that they see in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York. We don't have those problems. We ensure that our representatives know that we will hold them to account. Because we do. We have a problem here in the United States, but it's not the government. It is the lack of understanding of the functionality of the government. There are people out there honestly believing that taking the abortion issue from the national level back to the states' issues, taking away rights. That is the exact opposite of reality. It is meant to be as small as possible. They wrote in the paperwork, a government being necessary to the free state. That is real. A government is real. There is no point in history that you can ever go back to and find any functioning society that did not have a government. And the closest you will ever come to freedom is what we have in the United States right now. They don't have that in England. They don't have that in Ireland. They don't have it in France or Germany. They don't have it in Poland. They don't have it in any of the countries anywheres. Wherever you think their civilization is, they don't have freedom. The closest place to absolute freedom is here. You can decide, hey, I don't like my job. I'm going to go to this one. And yes, you don't get to decide, oh, I just don't want to work. Nobody has ever been able to decide that. Ever. There's a whole myth going around that, well, back in the 17s and the 16s and the 15s, and the serfs had it better than we do. They had 6 months off a year. The fuck they did. Study some fucking history for once. They had a terrible life. And that is real. The fact that you might not make enough food to survive the winter was real. They had 13 children because half of them would die. That is real. The fact that you might run out of heat in the wintertime is a real consideration. We have this idea that if government goes away, everybody's just going to act fucking correctly, and that is insane. Have you seen people? What do you think would happen if in just one state they got rid of the government? Criminals would take over. That is real. And you don't have to believe that. There's going to be people arguing, but you're wrong. And I don't say that lightly. I am for self-determination. I am for communalism. I am for ethical capitalism. I believe that you should make money and spend it ethically. I think that your values should shape everything that you do. But I can't impose my values on you without consent. That is the foundation of what we have here in this republic. If we don't have the republic, we don't have that. That doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet. We are getting dangerously close to a lot of these isms, right? Capitalism is a good one, but communism is not. Socialism sucks. Anarcho-capitalism is fucking dumb. It doesn't work. It would never work. It has never worked in the history of humanity. Never anywheres has that been a thing. It has not even been tried because it is an impossibility. This is intimating more for, like, they're making the argument that communism is bad, so therefore government is bad. That's what this whole fucking video was. This wasn't about anarcho-capitalism, although that is what it purports to be. This was, well, this system of government set up exactly like communism doesn't work, so therefore all government is bad. They put on there my country. They showed my Capitol House with my flag talking about you need to get over this. Fuck you. I made an oath to the Constitution, and you know what? I actually read the fucking thing. I discussed this in intimate detail because I understand it. There are a lot of people out here who will convince you of a lot of things, and they're wrong. But most people are willing to take facts on face value, right? You tell me that this thing is true, and I trust you, so therefore it must be true, or anything along that nature. Tim Pool, which is how this got recommended, right? This came off of a Tim Pool video, has stated numerous times, well, I'd vote for Dave Smith. Well, Tim, you're a fucking idiot too. I would vote for Kamala Harris before I would vote for Dave Smith, because at least she's playing by some rules. Dave Smith is dumb. He has convinced people that he's got some sense, but he doesn't. He doesn't understand his own arguments, and he's out there spewing this garbage like other people are supposed to. I get passionate over this because I can see where this shit leads, right? I will not live under communism. I might die under it, but I will not live under it. I will not live under anarcho-capitalism either. Because here's the thing. I'm going to tell you something, and you can take this with a grain of salt if you want to, but I'm going to tell you something right now. I am dirtier than you are. I will do things that you will not. I can promise you that. And I stand these days in my morals. But if you give me the choice between either you live or you serve, which is what this leads to, I'm going to live. I'm going to be the guy who comes and takes your shit. I'm going to be the guy that organizes the government that you overthrew a government for. I'm going to organize the next one, and I'm going to be the dude in charge of that shit. I'm going to be the guy because I will do dirty shit. I choose not to. I choose to live in my values, but I can just as easily choose to not to. I refuse to do that these days, right? I could be making a lot more money than I am. I really could. I could be doing things that you wouldn't even consider. I have the opportunities presented to me. Like all of these contracts and shit that you think these celebrities got, I can do. I choose not to do these things because I stand in my values. I believe in this system and I will fight and die for this system. But if you get rid of this system and I'm still alive, I'm going to enslave you. It's going to happen. I can inspire enough people to follow me, and I can get the right ones. I know where to go. I know how to talk to them. I know psychology. I can get people to follow me. I choose not to do that. I choose honesty. I choose being frank with you. I choose, if you want to follow the things that I do, then follow next to me. Don't follow behind me. I don't want to be some kind of fucking leader, although that is probably going to wind up being thrust upon me at some point, because who else is going to do it? Nobody else has got the stones for it. This system that we have here, this is the best thing that has ever been devised on the entirety of the planet. And I read through Plato. I read through the Republic, and I've seen, right, where we came from. I study history, like deep history, way back in the days when actual despots actually walked the earth. Much worse than Hitler was. Those are real too. See what happened to the Germanic tribes whenever the Romans entered. And the Romans were a free state. They were a republic at the point in time. See what happens to anybody who dissented to Christianity through the last 1,000 years, up until the last 150 or so. The natural tendency of man is to rule over another man. And us here, we are experimenting in something unique. Something that has never been tried. Even the Republic, way back in the days of Plato, right? Even that Republic way back then was not what we have. It wasn't. It was not even a representative democracy. It was closer to a true democracy, which is absolute fucking tyranny. I know that I got a little bit more animated than I normally do on this, but it is because I see this a lot, right? I choose not to react to this a lot. There is so much victim mentality tied up in our very existence that it is sad. You see people blaming someone else for everything. This is victim mentality shit. This is all the state. You have control. There is nothing in practicality that the president can do if your state desists. If our state, my state of Louisiana, says, no, we're going to hold on to our sovereignty, then they would have to come at us with the full force of everything. And if we are standing correctly, hopefully other people will stand with us. But the president doesn't have that power. The power rests in the Congress. And that is a very real thing. The Congress and the Senate to a lesser degree. The Congress to the largest degree determines where we're going. And you will dismiss your local representative to vote for a president. They will have people out there are going to vote for Trump and then vote for a Democrat for their congressman. That's going to happen. Because, well, no. Your local matters more. Your local school board matters more than Congress does. They are educating your children. That's what's going to take care of you in your old age. Are you making sure that they're teaching actual facts and not cut off your fucking pieces? Are they teaching actual science, or are they teaching the pseudo shit that they're shoving down our throats? Here it's fine. We're good here. Like, we pay more in taxes right here in Walker, Louisiana than pretty much the rest of my state. and we have better schools. We hold them to account. Now, that ain't saying much because Louisiana scores lowest on the Department of Education shit, but the Department of Education is not correct in a lot of things. States hold power. Your individual local governments hold power. If your entire city decides that they are not going to comply with whatever comes on, then it is what it is. Here, back in 2020, when everybody else was doing the thing, right here, it was perfectly fine. You could walk into any store and receive no resistance whatsoever. I did it. I didn't wear that thing. I'm not going to wear another one. It is up to your local governments. And this annoys me. Like, this was literally talking about communism is bad, so government is bad. And that is stupid. Communism is bad. It is. It's completely ineffective. It doesn't work. Right? It works great on paper. On paper, communism is the best system of government. To everyone his wants as determined by his needs. Right? If you want to write a book, then you can. But in actuality, communism doesn't let you write a book. Communism has you out there planting some seeds. You're working the plantation. Here you get to decide whether you want to write a book, whether you want to do art, whether you want to make music. You get to decide if you want to be a welder or a pipe fitter. You get to decide your destiny here. And it's not the same everywhere else. It's really not. And we need to wake up here in this country to that fact. I can't stand communists. I can't stand socialists. And I can't stand anarcho-capitalism. They are all three the same teats on the same worthless boar hog. You ain't getting no milk from that. You're dying. That's where I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I know I have probably stepped on all kinds of toes, and I don't care. Like, I am here to expose truth, and the truth is that this is fucking dumb. And this is not an attack on the person who recommended this, right? I'm never going to attack you. I'm going to attack your ideas, and I'm going to do it as aggressively as I need to. I held myself back greatly in my expression of distaste for this particular series of ideas right here. I really did, because to me, this is stupid. Like, completely baseless stupid. It takes into consideration nothing of actuality. It is merely a retelling of Animal Farm with a different ending so that you will put it onto capitalism. It's fucking dumb. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I understand that I have some unconventional beliefs and a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but I do not well, this one was kind of intentional. And I definitely do not apologize for it. And if you don't like me and you don't want to hang out anymore, that's cool. I am here to deliver truth, and it doesn't matter to me who I piss off with it. Hopefully, YouTube doesn't hit me too hard because I got a little bit heated, a little bit animated. I've been leaning away from politics for this reason. I get spun up because this incarnation, while we are here, there's a reason for it. And mine is to stand for freedom. It really is. There is no freedom in anarcho-capitalism. There is only the illusion thereof. The same illusion that they were operating under in this communist state of Jones Plantation. If you like what I'm doing over here, hit me with the good stuff down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.